Welcome to the Maasto Fitness podcast. Today, in episode 36, we are going to talk about understanding and preventing muscle atrophy. So, this is a quick hit podcast where we keep them short and to the point, focusing on the things you can do off the bike to race faster and safer. At Maasto Fitness, we work with racers remotely in the real world. Many have a life full of commitments and don't have a lot of time to train off the bike or ride. We provide training off the bike, so days on the bike, whether riding or racing, are faster and safer. And like I said, today we're talking about muscle atrophy. And so this is something that riders can deal with, and we're going to talk about the different ways you can deal with it, what it is, and how to prevent it. So, first, what is muscle atrophy? Muscle atrophy is a loss of muscle tissue, typically due to a decline in activity or not enough sufficient load on the muscle tissue. And how this affects riders is when you deal with muscle atrophy, you've got reduced stability, control on the bike. You fatigue more, and you just don't have as much power, reaction time, all things that are really critical for racing. Now, on the science side, muscles adapt to demands, and when those demands decrease, like during recovery, off season, and injury, the muscle just doesn't have that same workload that it had, and the mass starts to decrease, and that can happen in as little as 1 or 2 weeks. So you can think about that a couple different ways. If you're if if you take a little time off of training and riding, muscles are going to they're going to atrophy. They're not going to get the same load, so they're going to decrease in size. If you have an injury, that's another big one. The inability to move or be active, you're going to deal with muscle atrophy. I think the best example there is if you've ever been in a cast for a while, an arm cast or a leg cast, and you have that cast removed, and that one set of muscles, that arm or that leg that was not able to move versus the one that you've been moving and doing everything with, they're going to be different sizes. And when you get that cast off, it's definitely just going to feel a lot weaker. Not only physically look weaker, but is going to feel a lot weaker as well. I think that's probably the best example. And I'm sure maybe you've dealt with that, or you've definitely known someone that they were like, man, when I got my cast off, my leg was like so weak, and my calf was like literally half the size. So that's probably the most common way I hear about muscle atrophy, that people seem to experience it. The most common way that you can really tell a difference, because you literally have an imbalance from left to right there. So, why muscle atrophy happens? Extended periods off the bike, or fewer full body workouts riding, or just not moving around as much as you were. And then injury recovery. When dealing with injury, the body reacts to different stressors. And if we're not using muscles, they literally shrink over time. And then another big one is aging. So muscle loss occurs faster with age. So the older the racer, the more you deal with muscle atrophy. And I would say the tipping point is right around 50 plus. That's where strength training starts to become even more important. Now, it's important for all of us as racers, any age, but over 50, we've really got to do that heavy loading and a bit of really high-end stressors with recovery to make sure we're just decreasing the muscle atrophy. Kind of just how it works with the aging. When you get over 50, it's something you're going to deal with no matter what. It's going to be an uphill battle. But if we put the right training techniques in place, you're going to decrease it, which is what we want. So that way we're able to perform on the bike and ride safe as well. Two big factors there. So now, how does off the bike training come into play here? Basically, the science-backed benefits. Mu Off the bike training is going to slow muscle atrophy and keep you primed for the demands of riding. Research shows that targeted strength and endurance exercises maintain muscle fiber size and function during downtime. So, making sure that you're just keeping up on strength training is important. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the body here. On the core, it's crucial for managing the forces to maintain control on the bike, especially in challenging conditions, which I think we all ride in challenging conditions, no matter if it's moto, woods, hare scramble, whatever it may be. We need to have that proper core strength. And just like the muscle atrophy of just thinking of a bicep muscle, it's the same with your core. And whenever I talk about the core, Remember, the core is not, which you can't see my hands here, they're below the screen, but I'm pointing at my core. The core is not just the muscles in the front, they wrap all the way around your body. Um, so the front, the side, the back, those are all part of your core. And when you think about on the bike, we need those to stabilize our whole body the whole time. So making sure you're keeping up on core. And then the endurance and cardio side, it's important to just maintain that cardiovascular health. Oh no, we think about muscle atrophy. We're thinking more about like physical size of muscle. But cardiovascular health works the same way. Our heart is a muscle. It needs to be conditioned, and keeping up on that conditioning is going to um, keep that keep things even and having you less likely to fatigue when you're out there riding and racing. So you can also just think of your cardiovascular system in terms of muscle atrophy, almost like detraining, just as important to keep up on. So, how can we prevent muscle atrophy? So, first, strength and mobility routine, focus on exercises that engage major muscles and are include movements like squats, deadlifts, rotational core movements. If you're a Maasto athlete, all this sounds really familiar. We do a lot of these um, compound movements, so we're working multiple muscles. We're not just working one muscle at a time. So good to help prevent muscle atrophy, but also good for just efficiency and core strength as well, because a lot of those multi-joint movements are also going to engage the core because we need to use balance as well when we're doing them. Another thing for muscle atrophy, this is the big one, is making sure you've got the correct amount of protein. And that general range is 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Now, I know here in the US, we don't use the metric system, but you can do a conversion there to kind of see where you need to be at. And the timing of that protein is also important. It's important to just eat a whole foods balanced diet, but then having some protein within 30 minutes of a workout if you're a female, 45 if you're a male, are going to help your body better adapt and be able to properly recover those muscles, help those muscles grow, help those muscles repair, and that will prevent that muscle atrophy. Now, kind of like I mentioned earlier, over 50, once again, there's always special considerations. Kind of when we get to that point, the science has really improved in the last couple of years, or I should say the data has really improved in the last couple of years, making even better science. And if you're over 50, there are special considerations you need to make, which basically your body can't absorb protein as well as it did when you were younger. So you need to just increase your protein intake to help your body absorb the amounts you used to absorb, simply put. So those are all just general recommendations. You can dive deeper into that and do a little bit more reading. We actually have more stuff at maastofitnessmx.com, so you can read a little bit more there. But protein intake is important, as is a whole food balanced diet. And then it's important to be adaptable. If you can't use a limb due to an injury, focus on unilateral exercises. Think single leg squats, one arm overhead row to reduce imbalances when you return. That's a big one. I've had athletes who have been injured, had surgeries, and we're always doing what we can do within the recommendations of the physician or the doctor. Um, you can often return to some form of exercise pretty quickly, making special considerations, and that helps reduce that muscle atrophy. And then when you're free of restrictions, you're free of PT, cast, whatever it may be, you're starting much further ahead than you would be had you done nothing. So keep that in mind. Being adaptable and being able to do something with the considerations of whatever's going on will make a big difference. And one thing we have at Maasto Fitness is our single jump training program, for example. We actually have complete training programs that are upper body only and lower body only for those situations where you are injured and you've got an injured leg, you twisted your knee, you tore your ACL, whatever it may be. We've got complete upper body program. So it just focuses on the upper body. You can do it without using the lower body. We've got complete lower body programs. So if you took a hit to the shoulder or you injured your arm or whatever it may be, we've got one that's just lower body. So we're big on doing what you can safely when you can, and it makes a big difference with that muscle atrophy. And then the most important thing for all of us, I think, is return to sport, return to racing, starting us off at the highest point we could possibly be. So speaking of that return to racing, and muscle loss. It's important to take a gradual approach. Start with shorter intensity sessions, shorter intensity strength, lighter strength, focus on body movement and form over anything with rides. You know, don't when you take off, when you put your helmet on and take off for your first ride after injury and maybe some muscle loss and not being where you were. Don't think about where you were when it all happened. Kind of meet your body where it's at and take your time going back. It's always the best recipe for success. I know I'm one right here with you. It's really hard to do. But if we take off too hard too quick and our body's not conditioned, we're doing muscle atrophy and time off the bike, when we go too hard, we're setting ourselves up for a setback pretty quick. So just take your time when you get back to it. I know it's so much easier said than done, but it will make a big difference. So that's all I've got for you today. That's the conclusion on muscle atrophy. The big things, I think the takeaways are eat adequate protein. Make sure you're getting your training in. When you're injured, do what you can. And then as you age, how you strength train and your protein intake becomes even more important. So we'll leave it that simple as that. Now, I do want to keep it in mind here for everyone. Black Friday is coming up. I mentioned the single jump training program. We've got some cool deals coming up here in 2.5 weeks for Black Friday. So keep an eye out for that. And that's all I got for you this week. And then always as a reminder, at Maasto Fitness, we build strength, endurance, flexibility, and mobility training for racers. Plus, we have tons of resources, hydration and nutrition guides. It's something, if you want to give it a try, if you're not a Maasto racer, send me a message on Instagram. I'll get you a free week of our single jump training program. And you can test drive it before you sign up. No credit card or anything needed. All I need is your email address. So keep it at that, and I'll see you guys next week.